In the dimly lit expanse of his sprawling mansion office, where sleek monitors hummed with the quiet efficiency of a tech empire built from nothing but raw ambition and lines of code, Alexander Grant, a 50-year-old billionaire whose AI software had revolutionized industries from healthcare to finance, sat motionless in his high-backed leather chair, his breathing deliberately slow and rhythmic, eyes barely cracked open beneath the guise of slumber, a calculated pretense designed to probe the depths of human integrity after a devastating betrayal that had shattered his once unshakable trust in the world around him, for it was only months ago that his most trusted advisor, a man he had considered a confidant and partner in innovation, had absconded with millions in intellectual property, leaving behind a trail of falsified documents and a gaping void in Alexander's faith, prompting him to question if honesty was merely a myth perpetuated by the naive. And so he had orchestrated this meticulous test, the safe in the corner of the room yawning wide open like an invitation to temptation, its contents a glittering array of jewels, diamonds that caught the faint light from the desk lamp, sapphires as deep as midnight skies, and stacks of bearer bonds representing fortunes that could alter lives in an instant, all laid bare without a single lock or alarm to deter the opportunistic. His plan simple yet profound: to observe, to wait, and to see if anyone could resist the siren call of easy wealth when no one was watching, or so they would believe. As Alexander's half-lidded gaze scanned the room with the precision of the algorithms he had pioneered, every nerve attuned to the slightest movement, his mind racing through scenarios of disappointment that he had come to expect from humanity's frailer side. 0:30. The soft click of the door handle turning broke the silence, heralding the arrival of Maria Thompson, his dedicated housekeeper of 3 years, a woman whose quiet diligence had become as integral to the smooth running of his household as the automated systems that controlled the lights and climate. Maria, with her warm, brown skin glowing under the artificial lights, her hair neatly pulled back in a practical bun that spoke of efficiency born from necessity, entered the room hand in hand with her 7-year-old daughter Sophia, a bright-eyed child whose presence during these evening shifts was a concession Alexander had made long ago. Understanding the challenges of single parenthood in a world that offered little support, Sophia, clad in a miniature apron that Maria had sewn herself from scraps of fabric, a cheerful polka-dotted garment that made the little girl feel like a true helper rather than a tag-along during her mother's work hours, especially now that school had shifted to online formats, allowing Sophia to accompany Maria more often. The pair moving with the familiarity of routine, Maria releasing Sophia's hand to begin her tasks, dusting the expansive bookshelves lined with tomes on quantum computing and ethical AI that Alexander rarely opened anymore, his focus having shifted inward to this personal experiment in morality, while Sophia, with the boundless curiosity of youth, wandered closer to the desk where Alexander feigned sleep, her small feet padding softly on the plush carpet, her eyes widening not at the man in the chair but at the open safe across the room, its contents sparkling like treasures from the fairy tales Maria read to her at bedtime. Tales of princesses and dragons where honesty always triumphed. Lessons that Maria instilled with gentle persistence, drawing from her own hard-won experiences. 1 o'clock. Alexander's heart rate quickened imperceptibly as Sophia approached the safe, her tiny frame silhouetted against the glow of the jewels. He braced himself for the inevitable, expecting her to reach out with childish greed, perhaps pocketing a single gem in innocent mischief, or calling out to her mother in excitement that would lead to adult temptation, but what unfolded next defied every cynical expectation he harbored, freezing him in place with a mixture of astonishment and something deeper, a stirring emotion he hadn't felt since his early days of building his company from a garage startup. For Sophia didn't touch the valuables, didn't even glance at them with longing. Instead, her brow furrowed in concern as she noticed the safe's door ajar, whispering to herself in a voice barely audible, "Oh no, Mr. Grant's special box is open. Bad guys could come and take his shiny things. Mommy always says we have to keep important stuff safe." and with a determination that belied her age, she reached up on tiptoes to grasp the heavy door, pushing it closed with all her might, her little hands straining until it clicked shut. But she didn't stop there, recalling a moment weeks ago when she had overheard Alexander mentioning the code in passing during a phone call, 4 simple digits that her sharp young mind had memorized without intent, and so she punched them in with careful precision, the lock engaging with a satisfying beep, ensuring the treasures were secured. Then, not content with just that act of guardianship, Sophia tore a page from her small notebook she carried for doodling during quiet moments, scribbling in her wobbly handwriting, "Mr. Grant, your box was open. I shut it so bad guys don't take it." From Sophia, folding it neatly and placing it on his desk right beside his sleeping form, her actions so pure, so devoid of any ulterior motive, that Alexander felt a lump form in his throat, his pretense nearly cracking as he fought the urge to open his eyes fully and thank her. But he remained still, observing as she skipped back to her mother, proudly announcing in a hushed tone, "Mommy, I helped Mr. Grant. His safe was open, but I fixed it just like you taught me to lock our door at home." 1:45. Maria paused in her dusting, turning to Sophia with a smile that lit up her tired features, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "That's my good girl, always doing the right thing, even when no one's looking. Remember, integrity is like a muscle. It gets stronger every time we use it," her words a gentle echo of the values she had fought to uphold throughout her life. Values forged in the fires of adversity. For Maria's story was one of resilience that Alexander would soon uncover in his quiet investigations. Born to immigrant parents who passed away too young in a tragic accident, leaving her to navigate the foster system with its cold bureaucracy and fleeting kindnesses, she had emerged determined not to let hardship define her, working multiple jobs through high school to support herself, dreaming of a better future. But at 25, she found herself in an abusive relationship that she escaped only after discovering she was pregnant with Sophia, the child's father vanishing into the ether at the first sign of responsibility, leaving Maria to raise her daughter alone in a modest apartment on the city's outskirts, scraping by on housekeeping wages while pursuing a nursing degree through night classes and online modules, refusing government aid out of a fierce pride that she would make it on her own terms, her evenings with Alexander providing not just income but a stable routine where Sophia could do homework under the warm lights of the mansion, far from the distractions of their cramped home, and it was this unyielding spirit that began to chip away at Alexander's cynicism as he lay there, pretending to stir from his nap only after they had moved to another room. Discovering the note and the locked safe, his fingers tracing Sophia's childish script with a reverence he reserved for breakthrough code. Realizing that this small act had restored a flicker of hope in his jaded heart. 2:30. In the days that followed, Alexander found himself drawn into their world from afar, installing discreet cameras not out of suspicion but curiosity, watching as Maria guided Sophia through simple chores, turning cleaning into games that taught responsibility. Like sorting recyclables into categories, while discussing how small actions protect the planet, or wiping down surfaces while Maria shared stories of historical figures who overcame prejudice and poverty, tales of Harriet Tubman leading others to freedom, or Martin Luther King Jr.'s dreams of equality. Stories that resonated with Maria's own experiences of subtle discriminations in her daily life. From judgmental glances in upscale stores to overlooked applications for better jobs, yet she never complained. Instead, channeling that energy into empowering Sophia. "One day, my love, you'll be the one changing the world, but always with kindness and truth as your guides," she'd say, hugging her daughter close, and Alexander, reviewing the footage in the solitude of his private study, felt a pang of envy for their bond, contrasting sharply with his own isolated existence. Surrounded by wealth, but devoid of genuine connections, his marriage long dissolved in the pursuit of success. his friends reduced to business associates who eyed his fortune with veiled envy, prompting him to reflect on how his empire, while innovative, had come at the cost of humanity. And so, moved by Sophia's unexpected guardianship, he began anonymous gestures of support, first by wiring funds to cover Sophia's enrollment in after-school art classes, justifying it to his accountant as a charitable deduction, watching from reports how the child's drawings blossomed from stick figures to vibrant scenes of families and heroes, then increasing Maria's salary under the guise of a company-wide adjustment for household staff, adding bonuses labeled as performance incentives that allowed her to afford better books for her nursing studies and fresh groceries without the constant worry of bills piling up, each act a silent acknowledgement of their worth, a bridge he was building without them knowing, all while he pondered deeper ways to integrate them into his life, perhaps offering Maria a scholarship through one of his foundations, or mentoring Sophia in coding basics when she was older, ideas that swirled in his mind as he observed their quiet strength. 3:15. Yet, as these kindnesses unfolded, Alexander couldn't shake a growing awareness of the shadows lurking in his own company, whispers from board meetings where colleagues like Victor Langley, the sharp-tongued CFO with his old money pedigree, made offhand comments about maintaining standards in hiring, comments that now struck Alexander as veiled prejudices, especially as he learned more about Maria's struggles against systemic barriers, her applications for nursing positions rejected not for lack of skill but perhaps for the color of her skin or her single mother's status, igniting in him a resolve to dig deeper, to use his resources not just for personal gain, but to illuminate and dismantle such injustices, starting with his own household and extending outward. For Sophia's simple act of closing the safe had opened something within him, a door to empathy, to action, and to the realization that true security wasn't in locked vaults but in the trust and decency of those around us, a lesson that would soon propel him into conflicts he never anticipated as the prejudices hidden in the corridors of power began to surface, threatening the fragile peace he had found in their presence. But for now, in this chapter of quiet transformation, Alexander committed to mentoring them from the shadows, watching as Maria and Sophia's lives brightened imperceptibly, their bond a beacon in his otherwise dim world, proving that sometimes the greatest guardians come in the smallest packages, and that one act of unexpected honesty can thaw even the coldest of hearts, setting the stage for revelations that would challenge everything he thought he knew about loyalty, bias, and the true value of human connection in a world too often divided by wealth and preconceptions, a story of awakening that was only just beginning, with lessons waiting to unfold in the most surprising ways, reminding us all that integrity, when witnessed, has the power to inspire change far beyond the confines of a single room or a single life, echoing through actions that ripple outward, like code compiling into a greater program of justice and compassion. 4 o'clock. As the evenings continued in their rhythmic pattern, Alexander found himself anticipating Maria and Sophia's arrivals, not with the wariness of his initial test, but with a subtle eagerness, positioning himself in the office more often under the pretext of late-night work, though truly to catch glimpses of their interactions, like the time Sophia, inspired by her new art classes, presented Maria with a drawing of a superhero mom, complete with a cape made from cleaning cloths and a shield of honesty, Maria's laughter filling the room as she pinned it to the fridge in the staff kitchen, declaring it her most prized possession. Moments that humanized the mansion for Alexander, turning it from a fortress of solitude into a space alive with potential, and he delved deeper into Maria's background through discreet inquiries, learning of her volunteer work at local shelters where she helped other single mothers navigate resources she had once needed, her nursing aspirations rooted in a desire to heal not just bodies but spirits broken by hardship, a calling that resonated with Alexander's own early dreams of using AI to democratize healthcare, dreams sidelined by the pursuit of profit, now rekindled as he considered funding programs that could support women like Maria, perhaps establishing a grant in her name anonymously, ideas that kept him awake long after they left. pondering how to bridge the gap between his world and theirs without imposing. For he recognized the delicacy of such interventions, not wanting to undermine Maria's independence, which shone through in every decision she made, from turning down offers of overtime that would cut into Sophia's bedtime stories to saving pennies for a future college fund. Her determination a mirror to his own rise from humble beginnings, though his had been buoyed by privilege he now acknowledged. And in Sophia, he saw echoes of his younger self, curious, inventive. Once tinkering with circuits in a basement, now she experimented with colors and shapes. Her latest project, a collage of safe places featuring locked doors and smiling families, unwittingly symbolizing the very act that had sparked this chain of events, making Alexander smile in the darkness as he reviewed the day's footage, his cynicism eroding like outdated code being rewritten, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose that whispered of greater things to come, of alliances forged in unexpected places, and of the battles against hidden biases that loomed on the horizon. For in protecting his treasures, Sophia had inadvertently guarded something far more valuable: his capacity for hope. 445. The transformation within Alexander was subtle at first, manifesting in small changes to his routine, like leaving out educational toys in the office for Sophia to discover, puzzles that challenged her young mind with patterns and logic, watching as she solved them with glee, Maria encouraging her with praises that built confidence without spoiling. "See, baby, you're smart because you try. Not because it's easy." Words that Alexander noted down in a private journal he had started, a record of lessons learned from this unlikely duo. Entries detailing how Maria handled Sophia's occasional tantrums with patience, turning them into teachable moments about emotions and choices, contrasting with the cutthroat negotiations of his boardroom where vulnerability was a weakness, prompting him to experiment with more empathetic leadership in his company, starting with anonymous surveys on employee well-being, results revealing undercurrents of dissatisfaction among minority staff that he had previously overlooked, linking back to figures like Victor, who dismissed diversity initiatives as unnecessary expenses, comments that now grated on Alexander's evolving conscience, fueling his decision to investigate further. Hiring a consultant to audit hiring practices while he continued his personal support for Maria and Sophia, escalating to covering medical checkups through a company health program that he extended to all staff but ensured reached them first, delighting in Maria's relieved updates to a friend over the phone about Sophia's clean bill of health. Conversations he overheard, not through eavesdropping but incidental recordings, each piece adding to the mosaic of their lives that captivated him. A reminder that wealth's true power lay in uplifting others, not hoarding. And as he lay in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, he resolved to step out from the shadows soon, perhaps offering Maria a position in his foundation's outreach programs, leveraging her experiences to help others, a plan that excited him more than any merger or acquisition. For in Sophia's guardian act, he had found not just proof of honesty but a blueprint for his own redemption, a path toward a legacy defined by compassion rather than conquest. Though unaware of the storms brewing in the form of Victor's growing suspicions, jealousies that would soon erupt into open conflict, testing the bonds he was forming and the principles he was rediscovering, but in this moment of quiet guardianship, the foundation was laid for a story of profound change, where a child's simple deed became the catalyst for a billionaire's awakening to the world's deeper truths. 530. Deepening his involvement without revelation, Alexander began curating experiences for them indirectly, such as arranging for a local library to host a storytelling event on themes of integrity and perseverance, inviting Maria through a generic flyer slipped into her paycheck envelope, observing from afar as Sophia listened raptly to tales of unsung heroes, her eyes wide with inspiration. Later recreating the stories in her drawings that Maria shared proudly during breaks, moments that reinforced Alexander's belief in the ripple effects of kindness, prompting him to expand his anonymous philanthropy, Donating to the nursing school Maria attended to reduce tuition for low-income students, a move that lightened her load without her knowing the source, allowing her more time to study and bond with Sophia, who in turn flourished, her grades improving as she balanced chores with creativity. Maria often reflecting aloud on how things are looking up, like someone's watching over us. Words that touched Alexander deeply, affirming his path, yet also stirring a guilt for his secrecy, debating when to reveal himself, fearing it might alter their dynamic, but the joy in their voices outweighed the doubt, and he pressed on, learning more about Maria's past through public records and subtle questions to mutual acquaintances, discovering her advocacy in community forums for better childcare options, her voice a force for change in small ways, inspiring him to fund such initiatives quietly, all while his own life shifted, dinners alone becoming less lonely as he imagined sharing stories with them one day. His work infused with renewed vigor, AI projects now aimed at ethical applications like predictive tools for social services, ideas sparked by Maria's struggles, a synergy that made him feel alive again, far from the betrayal that had initiated this journey, now transformed into a quest for genuine connection, with Sophia's note framed in his study as a talisman, a reminder that guardians come in all forms, and that the unexpected can unlock doors long thought sealed, setting the scene for the challenges ahead where biases would clash with budding alliances. But for now, in the warmth of this unexpected guardianship, hope bloomed like code evolving into something greater, a narrative of transformation poised to unfold further. 6:15. As the weeks blended into a comforting routine, Alexander's observations yielded richer insights into their world. Like the evening Sophia struggled with a math problem from her online class, Maria patiently explaining concepts with household items, using jewels from a costume set to demonstrate addition, turning frustration into fun, a method Alexander admired for its ingenuity, contrasting with his own tutored childhood funded by scholarships he had earned through sheer grit, paralleling Maria's self-made path, motivating him to enhance his support by providing access to educational apps on a tablet donated to the staff room, watching Sophia's progress accelerate, her confidence growing as she mastered skills, Maria attributing it to good fortune, unaware of the hand guiding it, and Alexander, in turn, found himself adopting their habits, incorporating integrity checks into his business ethics training, inspired by Maria's teachings to Sophia about returning lost items. Even if valuable, stories she drew from personal anecdotes like finding a wallet in a park and tracking down the owner, acts that restored faith in strangers, much like Sophia had restored his, leading him to implement company policies rewarding ethical behavior, small bonuses for reporting discrepancies, fostering a culture he had neglected, all while Victor's name surfaced in reports as a resistor to such changes, his emails dismissing them as soft, hinting at deeper prejudices that Alexander noted for future reference, but pushing aside for the moment to focus on the positive, like Sophia's first art exhibition at the community center, funded indirectly by his contributions, where her piece, The Locked Treasure, depicted a safe guarded by angels, a symbolic nod to that fateful night, bringing tears to Maria's eyes and a swell of pride to Alexander's heart from his anonymous vantage point, reinforcing his commitment to this path of subtle mentorship, a guardianship of his own making, protecting and nurturing from afar, aware that the time for direct involvement was approaching as external pressures mounted, yet savoring the purity of this phase where hope was reborn through the lens of a child's innocence and a mother's unwavering strength, a chapter closing on introspection but opening to the complexities that lay beyond, where shadows of bias would demand action and the true test of character would extend from the safe to the wider world. 7 o'clock. Reflecting on the journey thus far, Alexander compiled mental notes on how Maria's resilience mirrored the adaptive algorithms he designed, her ability to pivot from setbacks like a denied loan for better housing into opportunities, such as bartering services for tutoring, showcasing a resourcefulness that inspired him to launch pilot programs in his company for employee skill sharing, initiatives that gained traction among staff but drew Victor's ire in private memos. Alexander intercepted through IT audits, memos laced with coded language about certain demographics diluting the workforce, language that now alarmed him, prompting a deeper dive into Victor's background. Uncovering old lawsuits settled out of court for discriminatory practices in previous roles, patterns of behavior that sickened Alexander, fueling his resolve to address it eventually, but not before solidifying his bond with Maria and Sophia, perhaps by arranging a random scholarship draw that Maria won for her nursing program, her joy palpable in the thank-you note she left in the office, assuming it was fate. While Alexander smiled at the orchestration, his acts becoming bolder, like inviting a guest speaker on women's empowerment to the mansion under the guise of a business event, ensuring Maria could attend with Sophia, the child absorbing messages of equality and self-belief, later echoing them in conversations with her mother. "Mommy, I can be anything if I work hard and be honest," words that echoed Alexander's own mantra from youth, bridging their worlds in invisible ways. And as he watched them depart one night, silhouettes against the driveway lights, he felt a paternal protectiveness, a desire to shield them from the victors of the world, knowing that soon the test would evolve from personal to professional, where prejudices would emerge from the shadows, challenging him to step into the light as their ally, a transition brewing like a storm on the horizon. But in this extended moment of unexpected guardianship, the foundation of trust was built strong, ready to withstand what came next, a testament to how one small act can ignite a chain of profound changes, illuminating paths previously unseen in the pursuit of a more just existence. 745. Expanding on this newfound purpose, Alexander began integrating elements of their lessons into his daily life, starting meditation sessions focused on gratitude. Inspired by Maria's evening prayers with Sophia, simple expressions of thanks for the day's blessings, a practice that grounded him amidst boardroom battles where Victor's opposition to diversity hires became more vocal, masked as fiscal concerns but reeking of bias, prompting Alexander to commission anonymous reports on company culture, results highlighting disparities in promotions for Black employees, statistics that hit home as he thought of Maria's untapped potential, motivating him to offer her additional training courses disguised as mandatory staff development, courses in management and healthcare administration that aligned with her goals, her enthusiasm evident in the faster pace of her work and the glow in her eyes shared with Sophia, who mimicked her mother's study habits with her own homework of drawing medical scenes, childish renderings of doctors and patients that Alexander collected copies of through the cleaning staff, cherishing them as symbols of potential. And he deepened his research into systemic issues, reading books on racial equity that Maria had mentioned in passing, books left forgotten in the library for her to find, sparking discussions he overheard about overcoming obstacles, conversations that educated him on the nuances of prejudice he had been blind to in his privileged bubble, awakening a fire to reform not just his household but his empire, starting with quiet alliances among like-minded executives, planting seeds for change while Victor remained oblivious, his focus on cost-cutting that inadvertently targeted vulnerable staff, tensions simmering beneath the surface, ready to boil over. But Alexander delayed confrontation, savoring the purity of his connection with Maria and Sophia, their presence a daily reminder that guardianship isn't about control but empowerment, a lesson culminating in Sophia's birthday surprise. He arranged anonymously a set of art supplies delivered with a note encouraging her dreams, her delight echoing through the halls as Maria hugged her. "See, good things come to good people," words that sealed Alexander's commitment. Knowing the chapter of silent support was nearing its end, with the emergence of shadows demanding he take a stand, transforming from observer to active protector in the face of bias, a evolution born from that initial freeze of astonishment at a child's selfless act. 8:30. As the narrative of this chapter winds toward its close, The intricate tapestry of Alexander's transformation weaves tighter, each thread a memory of Maria and Sophia's influence, from the way Maria organized the office with meticulous care, teaching Sophia about order as a form of respect, to the child's imaginative games that turned mundane tasks into adventures, inspiring Alexander to infuse creativity into his AI designs, shifting from pure efficiency to user-friendly interfaces that considered diverse needs. Innovations that boosted company morale but irked Victor's traditional mindset, his grumblings in emails about unnecessary frills hinting at deeper resentments. Resentments, Alexander catalogued for the inevitable reckoning, meanwhile escalating his support by funding a community center renovation where Maria volunteered, her role expanding to leading workshops on parenting and career building, positions that honed her skills and built her resume, all unbeknownst to her as his doing. And Sophia, thriving in this environment, began sharing her art with other kids, fostering a sense of community that Alexander envied and aspired to replicate in his corporate culture. Planning team-building events with inclusive themes. Events Victor boycotted subtly, his absence noted, building the case against him. Yet Alexander focused on the positive, like the night Sophia left a drawing on his desk of a sleeping giant protected by a little girl, a meta-reference to their first encounter that brought a rare tear to his eye, affirming the bond, and as he contemplated revealing himself, perhaps over a shared meal, the stage was set for the next phase, where biases would no longer lurk but confront, testing the strength of this unexpected guardianship, a foundation solid enough to support the weights of justice and change, proving that from the freeze of surprise can come the warmth of lasting impact, a story poised to continue with greater stakes and deeper revelations. 9:15. In the final reflections of this chapter, Alexander's world had irrevocably shifted. The open safe now a metaphor for his opened heart, guarded not by locks but by the integrity Sophia demonstrated, an integrity Maria nurtured through daily acts of love and principle, acts that inspired him to audit his life beyond business, rekindling hobbies like painting, influenced by Sophia's art, creating pieces in private that depicted scenes of unity and protection, symbols of his internal growth, while externally, his company began to reflect this change, with new policies on flexible work for parents that benefited Maria directly, allowing her more time for studies, her progress accelerating toward graduation, a milestone he planned to celebrate anonymously, and as Victor's shadows lengthened, his comments in meetings about inappropriate staff influences targeting Maria's presence with Sophia, Alexander prepared, gathering evidence quietly, his detective Elena Ruiz on standby for deeper probes, but withholding action to preserve the peace of this transformative period. A period where hope supplanted cynicism, where a child's act became the cornerstone of a billionaire's rebirth, setting the narrative forward into realms of conflict and triumph, where the unexpected guardian would evolve into a force for broader justice, leaving viewers eager for what shadows of bias would bring next in this tale of honesty, prejudice, and redemption. 10 o'clock. And so, as the chapter concludes, the mansion office, once a site of solitary ambition, now pulsed with the invisible energy of connection, Alexander no longer pretending to sleep but fully awake to the possibilities. Thanks to Maria and Sophia, whose lives he had touched from the shadows, readying for the light of revelation and the battles ahead, a seamless transition to the emerging shadows that promised to test and ultimately strengthen the bonds formed in this unexpected guardianship. 0 o'clock. As the subtle glow of dawn filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alexander Grant's corporate headquarters, a towering glass edifice that symbolized the pinnacle of his AI empire, the air hummed with the low buzz of servers and the distant clatter of early arrivals, but beneath this veneer of productivity lurked the insidious tendrils of bias that were beginning to coil around the unsuspecting, marking the onset of shadows that would test alliances and expose hidden fractures in the foundation of power. For while Alexander's personal awakening had blossomed in the quiet confines of his mansion, the ripples of his anonymous kindnesses toward Maria and Sophia were starting to stir unrest in the boardroom, where Victor Langley, the five-year-old CFO with his impeccably tailored suits and a lineage tracing back to industrial tycoons, held court with an air of inherited entitlement, his sharp features etched with perpetual disdain for anything he deemed beneath his station. Noticing the anomalies in payroll, subtle increases in Maria's compensation, framed as incentives, flexible scheduling that allowed Sophia's occasional presence during off hours, and interpreting them not as acts of compassion, but as signs of weakness in Alexander's leadership, a dilution of the elite standards he believed essential to maintaining the company's prestige, Victor's resentment festering like unchecked code errors, accumulating in a system driven by a worldview shaped by exclusive clubs and echo chambers where diversity was tokenized at best and scorned at worst, prompting him to initiate a campaign of whispers and insinuations that would gradually escalate into a web of intrigue, all while Alexander, oblivious at first to the full extent, began to sense the gathering storm through anomalous reports crossing his desk. 045. Victor's machinations started innocuously enough in the polished conference rooms where quarterly reviews unfolded like scripted performances, casually dropping remarks during budget discussions about extraneous expenditures on peripheral staff. His eyes narrowing as he highlighted line items related to household operations, implying without outright accusation that such favors eroded fiscal discipline, his words laced with coded prejudice that resonated with a few like-minded executives who nodded in agreement, fostering an undercurrent of doubt about Alexander's judgment and extending his influence to the HR department, where he anonymously submitted complaints through internal channels about potential security risks posed by unauthorized visitors, a veiled reference to Sophia's innocent forays into the mansion during Maria's shifts, complaints that triggered mandatory reviews, forcing Maria into uncomfortable interviews with HR representatives who probed her routines with clinical detachment, asking pointed questions about childcare arrangements and whether her daughter's presence compromised efficiency, Maria handling these sessions with poised dignity. Her responses measured and professional, emphasizing her track record of reliability and how Sophia's quiet activities, homework or drawing, never interfered. But inwardly, the scrutiny gnawed at her, evoking memories of past workplaces where similar biases had sidelined her advancements. Yet she shielded Sophia from the tension, turning potential distress into opportunities for growth by involving her in community volunteering after shifts, like sorting donations at a local food bank, where Maria taught her about empathy and the importance of giving back. Even when things feel unfair, we rise by helping others, showing our strength through service, words that fortified them both against the invisible pressures mounting from Victor's direction. 130. Alexander, reviewing the HR logs as part of his newfound vigilance, spotted the patterns, the uptick in anonymous tips targeting Maria specifically, discrepancies that didn't align with her impeccable performance and his instincts, honed from debugging complex AI systems, flagged them as anomalies warranting deeper scrutiny, leading him to engage Elena Ruiz, a seasoned private detective with a background in corporate espionage and a reputation for uncovering buried skeletons, her no-nonsense demeanor and sharp analytical mind making her the perfect ally in this emerging shadow play. Alexander briefing her discreetly over encrypted calls. "I need a full profile on Victor Langley, past behaviors, associations, anything that smells of impropriety." And Elena, with her network of informants and digital forensics tools, dove in, unearthing a trove of red flags. Victor's history at previous firms, marred by quiet settlements for harassment claims from minority employees, emails from old colleagues describing his tendency to block promotions for non-traditional candidates, and memberships in private forums where discussions veered into supremacist rhetoric under the guise of preserving meritocracy. Revelations that painted Victor not as a mere fiscal hawk, but as a guardian of outdated hierarchies. His actions driven by a fear of dilution that masked deeper insecurities, all while Alexander wrestled with the ethical quandary of surveillance, questioning whether his interventions crossed lines into paranoia, yet justifying it as necessary to protect the vulnerable. Much like Sophia had protected his safe, a parallel that grounded his resolve amid the moral fog. 2:15. Meanwhile, Victor intensified his subtle siege, leveraging his position to orchestrate audits of household expenses, framing them as routine compliance checks but ensuring they zeroed in on Maria's records, planting seeds of doubt by circulating memos about optimizing support staff roles that indirectly questioned the value of long-term employees like her, memos that reached Alexander's inbox but were dismissed initially as bureaucratic noise, though they prompted him to upgrade the mansion's security systems under the pretext of tech enhancements, installing additional microphones and analytics software that captured not just visuals but audio snippets of interactions, systems that inadvertently recorded Victor's rare visits to the estate for meetings, where his disdain manifested in offhand comments to aides about keeping the help in check. Words that Elena analyzed for patterns, cross-referencing with his digital footprint, discovering encrypted chats, where he vented frustrations about Alexander's softening, using derogatory terms for Maria's background that confirmed the bias Elena suspected, her reports to Alexander building a dossier of evidence, each piece a thread in the web of intrigue, forcing Alexander to confront the systemic rot within his own creation, a company he had built on innovation but neglected in terms of equity, now seeing how Victor's influence had quietly shaped hiring practices to favor certain demographics. Statistics Elena pulled from public filings showing underrepresentation that mirrored industry ills, igniting in Alexander a determination to reform from within, starting with anonymous policy proposals circulated to the board. 3 o'clock. On Maria's end, the mounting pressures manifested in quieter ways, like the anonymous email she received one evening, purportedly from HR, but traced later by Elena to a proxy server linked to Victor's assistant, warning about reviewing accommodations for family intrusions and suggesting she reconsider bringing dependents to work premises, a message that chilled her, evoking fears of instability she had fought hard to escape. Yet she responded not with confrontation but resilience, doubling down on her community involvement by organizing a volunteer drive for school supplies, enlisting Sophia to help pack bags, turning the activity into a lesson on self-worth. No matter what others say or do, our value comes from inside, from how we treat people, and stand tall, Maria explained as they worked side by side, Sophia nodding earnestly, her drawings now incorporating themes of brave helpers facing shadowy figures, innocent art that captured the essence of their ordeal without her fully understanding. And Maria, balancing this with intensified studies, found solace in late-night sessions where she pored over nursing texts, her progress a defiant act against the unseen forces arrayed against her, unaware that Alexander, through Elena's updates, was piecing together the puzzle, his outrage building as he learned of Victor's past 3 hushed lawsuits involving Black and Latino staffers who were driven out through fabricated performance issues. Patterns that echoed the current tactics, prompting Alexander to delve into ethical dilemmas, debating whether to expose Victor prematurely or gather irrefutable proof, opting for the latter to avoid backlash from the board where Victor held sway through family shares, a strategic patience that mirrored the debugging process, isolating bugs before eradication. 3:45. Elena's investigations deepened the intrigue, uncovering Victor's ties to influential networks that perpetuated exclusionary practices like advisory roles in think tanks advocating for merit-based policies that disproportionately disadvantaged minorities, and personal correspondences where he lamented the erosion of traditional values in corporate America, language decoded by Elena as euphemisms for racial gatekeeping. Her reports, including timelines of Victor's career moves, each transition coinciding with scandals swept under rugs by paternal interventions, his father a retired magnate with lingering clout, all of which Alexander absorbed in solitary sessions, his mansion office, now a command center of sorts, screens displaying data visualizations of Victor's network, nodes pulsing with connections that revealed a broader ecosystem of bias, challenging Alexander's naivety about his company's purity, and spurring him to initiate covert reforms such as partnering with diversity consultants under nondescript contracts, consultants who began auditing departments without Victor's knowledge, their findings corroborating Elena's intel disparities in pay and advancement that Victor had overseen. Metrics that fueled Alexander's internal conflict, torn between loyalty to longtime associates and the justice Sophia's act had awakened in him, a conflict resolved through quiet actions like bolstering Maria's security by adding encrypted communication tools to her work device, disguised as updates, ensuring she could report issues anonymously if needed, all while Victor, sensing resistance, escalated to indirect confrontations, like cornering a mutual colleague at a networking event, to probe about Alexander's household eccentricities, fishing for ammunition that Elena intercepted through planted sources. 4:30. The shadows thickened as Victor's campaign took on a more personal hue, manifesting in fabricated inventory discrepancies, items from the mansion reported missing in logs he influenced, items like office supplies that Maria handled, triggering internal probes that required her to account for her movements, sessions where HR grilled her on protocols, her composure holding but her nights plagued by worry, confiding in a close friend over coffee about the weird vibes at work, unaware her words were part of the larger intrigue, and Sophia, perceptive beyond her years, picked up on the strain. Her questions about why mommy looks tired met with reassuring hugs and stories of perseverance, Maria channeling the stress into productive outlets like mentoring young mothers at the shelter, sharing strategies for navigating workplace biases, experiences that honed her own resolve. While Alexander, armed with Elena's latest dossier, including screenshots of Victor's private social media rants against affirmative action, hires grappling with the revelation that his CFO's prejudices extended to policy sabotage, like vetoing training programs that could benefit staff like Maria, actions that delayed company progress and perpetuated inequities, prompting Alexander to explore legal avenues discreetly, consulting ethics advisors on whistleblower protections, all while maintaining his facade of normalcy in board meetings. Where Victor's smiles hid daggers, the tension palpable like a system on the verge of overload, Alexander's mind racing with contingency plans, knowing the shadows were converging toward a tipping point. 5:15. Delving further into the moral labyrinth, Alexander found himself questioning the very algorithms that powered his empire, realizing how biased data inputs often curated under Victor's financial oversight could perpetuate discrimination in AI outputs, a epiphany that led to internal audits of their products, uncovering subtle flaws like facial recognition, skews against darker skin tones, issues he prioritized for fixes, bypassing Victor's approval chains through executive overrides, moves that irked the CFO, who responded with passive-aggressive budget reallocations aimed at stalling such initiatives, escalations Elena documented meticulously, her surveillance extending to Victor's off-site activities, capturing audio from luncheons where he networked with peers sharing similar views, boasting about keeping the riff-raff out, phrases that solidified his profile as a systemic enabler. And Maria, navigating this minefield, found strength in small victories like acing a nursing exam despite the distractions, celebrating with Sophia over homemade treats, their bond a sanctuary amid the encroaching shadows. Sophia's latest project, a scrapbook of strong women featuring historical figures and her mother, a creative outlet that masked her intuitive grasp of the tensions, prompting Maria to teach her about discernment. Not everyone has good intentions, but we don't let that dim our light. Lessons that paralleled Alexander's own learning curve as he balanced intervention with restraint, planting digital traps like monitored email filters to catch Victor's oversteps, building a case that would eventually illuminate the biases lurking in the corporate underbelly. 6 o'clock. Victor's plotting grew bolder in subtlety, enlisting proxies to spread rumors in industry circles about Alexander's lax management, hints at favoritism that could undermine investor confidence. Rumors Elena traced back to him through IP logs, her expertise turning the tables on his intrigue, while Alexander, empowered by this intel, began fostering alliances with progressive board members, sharing anonymized data on the costs of bias, lost talent, legal risks that swayed opinions without direct accusation, a chess game of corporate maneuvering where each move heightened the stakes, and on the ground, Maria's resilience shone through community engagements like leading a workshop on resume building for underrepresented job seekers, drawing from her experiences to empower others. Sophia assisting by handing out materials, her presence a reminder of the generational impact at play, all while Victor, in a calculated escalation, drafted a proposal to outsource household services. A move disguised as cost-saving but aimed at displacing Maria. A proposal he circulated for feedback, reaching Alexander's desk as a harbinger of open conflict, prompting him to accelerate Elena's efforts. Her next report, revealing Victor's plans for a staged audit that could fabricate evidence against Maria, a scheme involving planted discrepancies, the shadows now coalescing into a tangible threat, setting the stage for the reckoning to come, where investigations would yield to action, and the ethical dilemmas would demand resolution in the face of emerging biases. 6:45. As the intrigue deepened, Alexander's nights blurred into strategy sessions, poring over Elena's timelines that mapped Victor's influence like a viral spread, identifying key inflection points where his biases had steered company decisions away from inclusivity, such as vetoing partnerships with minority-led startups under flimsy pretexts, actions that cost innovation opportunities, fueling Alexander's resolve to counter with his own initiatives, like quietly funding external audits that highlighted these lapses, reports he held in reserve for the opportune moment. While Maria, sensing the undercurrents without pinpointing the source, fortified her professional armor by networking at industry events for housekeepers turned managers, gleaning tips on navigating office politics, applying them to her role with renewed vigilance, her interactions with staff more documented, her shifts more efficient, turning adversity into advancement, and Sophia, absorbing the atmosphere, channeled it into stories she wrote for fun. Tales of hidden villains, thwarted by clever heroes. Narratives that mirrored the reality unfolding, providing Maria with light-hearted distractions amid the strain. As Elena uncovered more Victor's involvement in shadow boards advising on corporate purity, euphemisms for exclusion, Alexander pondered the broader implications, realizing this was not just personal but symptomatic of industry-wide ills, inspiring visions of reform that extended beyond his walls, yet tethered to the immediate need to safeguard Maria and Sophia from the escalating shadows. 7:30. The ethical crossroads loomed larger as Alexander debated the risks of premature exposure, weighing the potential fallout on company stock against the moral imperative to act, consulting anonymously with legal experts on discrimination laws, arming himself with knowledge while Elena delved into Victor's financials, spotting irregularities like undisclosed investments in firms known for exploitative practices, threads that could unravel his credibility, all while Victor, sensing scrutiny, doubled down on his campaign, authorizing surprise inspections of the mansion under safety pretexts. Inspections that Maria endured with grace, her records impeccable, thwarting his immediate goals but heightening her anxiety, which she mitigated through yoga sessions with Sophia, turning physical balance into mental fortitude. "We bend but don't break," she'd say, a mantra that resonated with Alexander's own struggles, his isolation in this battle prompting him to confide partially in a trusted advisor. Testing waters for broader support, as the shadows of bias emerged fully, no longer whispers but orchestrated maneuvers, culminating in Victor's clandestine meeting with HR to push for Maria's reassignment. A move Elena intercepted via a planted bug, the recording capturing his explicit disdain. "We can't have these types getting too comfortable." Words that crystallized the threat, propelling Alexander toward the trap's design, where the emerging biases would soon face the light of justice in the chapters to follow. 8:15. In the labyrinthine corridors of power, Victor's web extended to subtle sabotage. Like delaying payments to vendors Maria coordinated with, creating bottlenecks that reflected poorly on her if unchecked. But her proactive follow-ups neutralized them, showcasing her acumen, while Elena's forensics revealed the tampering, adding to the dossier, Alexander using this to subtly reroute approvals, bypassing Victor's chokeholds, a cat-and-mouse dynamic that sharpened his strategic mind, reminiscent of AI optimization puzzles. And Maria, drawing from her foster care survival skills, taught Sophia about intuition. Trust your gut when something feels off, lessons applied to playground dynamics but applicable to the adult intrigue swirling around them. Sophia's empathy growing as she comforted peers at volunteering events, her growth a counterpoint to Victor's stagnation, his prejudices rooted in unexamined privilege, as uncovered by Elena's psychological profile, suggesting deep-seated fears of irrelevance. Insights Alexander pondered during solitary walks, balancing compassion with accountability, the moral fog clearing as evidence mounted, setting the narrative toward confrontation without yet tipping the hand, the shadows of bias now a palpable force demanding navigation through intrigue and resolve. 9 o'clock. As the chapter of emerging shadows drew toward its zenith, the interplay of secrecy and discovery wove a tense tapestry, Victor's arrogance blinding him to the countermeasures, his plots like faulty algorithms destined for failure, while Alexander's alliance with Elena yielded fruits intercepted communications, planning a comprehensive review of staff backgrounds, a veiled witch hunt targeting Maria, the revelation accelerating preparations for defense, Maria's unwitting role in this drama strengthening through her community leadership, her workshops now attracting notice from local organizations, potential pathways to independence if needed, Sophia beaming with pride at her mother's impact, their duo a beacon amid the gloom, and Alexander, at the ethical precipice, committed to the path of vigilance, the shadows serving as catalysts for his continued evolution, from awakened observer to proactive guardian, teasing the renewal to come where reckonings would shatter the darkness, proving that biases, when confronted in their subtle forms, pave the way for illuminating change. 9:45. Culminating in a crescendo of suspense, the shadows solidified into imminent threat. Victor finalizing his scheme for a staged discredit, oblivious to the eyes upon him, Elena's final report a blueprint for counteraction, Alexander poised at the edge, the intrigue a forge for his resolve, ensuring the narrative's pivot to reckoning would be as inevitable as it was transformative, leaving the biases exposed in their insidious glory, ready for the light. 0 o'clock. In the charged atmosphere of Alexander Grant's corporate headquarters, where the glass walls reflected the stormy skies outside like omens of the upheaval to come, the reckoning unfolded with the precision of a well-coded algorithm executing its final command. Victor Langley, oblivious to the digital noose tightening around him, strode into the mansion's service area that fateful evening. His arrogance a shield against the impending storm, having meticulously planted a prototype AI gadget, a sleek, experimental device worth thousands, embedded with proprietary tech in Maria's cleaning cart earlier that day under the cover of a fabricated maintenance visit, muttering to himself about teaching lessons to those who overstep. His plan to stage a discovery during a surprise inspection, complete with witnesses from security and HR, designed to frame her for theft and force her resignation or worse, all to reassert his perceived order in the hierarchy he so zealously guarded. But little did he know that Alexander, forewarned by Elena Ruiz's intercepted communications and surveillance feeds, had transformed the estate into a fortress of evidence, high-definition cameras capturing every angle of the planting in crystal clarity, audio logs recording Victor's incriminating whispers, and a team of ethical hackers monitoring his every digital move, positioning journalists from reputable outlets tipped off anonymously about a brewing corporate scandal in the wings, ready to broadcast the truth. As Alexander watched from his command center upstairs, his pulse steady with the cold fire of justice, knowing this was the moment where shadows would shatter under the weight of revelation, turning personal vendettas into public reckonings that would redefine legacies. 045. The trap sprang with theatrical inevitability as Victor, flanked by 2 security guards and an HR liaison he had coerced into compliance, descended upon the area where Maria was methodically organizing supplies, Sophia humming softly nearby as she colored in a book of inspirational figures. The air thick with tension Victor mistook for his own intimidation, announcing with feigned authority, "Routine check, Mrs. Thompson. We've had discrepancies in inventory. Need to inspect your cart." His voice dripping with condescension as he beelined for the planted spot, pulling out the gadget with exaggerated surprise. "Well, what do we have here? This looks like confidential tech from R&D. How did it end up in your possession?" Maria's face paled, her hand steadying on the cart as she replied firmly, "I've never seen that before, Mr. Langley. This must be a mistake." Her dignity unbroken, even as Sophia looked up wide-eyed, sensing the hostility, but Victor pressed on, signaling the guards to detain her while dialing what he thought was the authorities. His triumph short-lived as Alexander emerged from the shadows of the adjoining hallway, Elena at his side with a tablet glowing with damning footage, and the journalists materializing like ghosts from concealed positions, cameras rolling, Alexander's voice cutting through the chaos with unyielding calm. "Victor, I suggest you hang up that call, unless you want to explain to the police why you're framing an innocent employee." 1:30. The exposure erupted like a data breach flooding the system, Elena projecting the high-res videos onto a portable screen for all to see angle after angle of Victor sneaking the device into the cart, his face unmistakable, timestamps irrefutable, accompanied by audio clips of his biased rants from private calls. "We can't let these outsiders think they belong," words that drew gasps from the witnesses, Maria covering Sophia's ears protectively as the journalists fired questions. "Miss Langley, care to comment on this evidence of discrimination and fraud?" Victor stammering, sweat beading on his brow, attempting bluster. "This is entrapment. Alexander, you can't use this against me," but Alexander interrupted with steely resolve. "Actually, it's your own security protocols you approved, now turned inward. And here's more." As Elena unveiled the full dossier screenshots of racist forum posts advocating for purity and leadership, records of settled lawsuits from past victims, emails plotting to undermine minority hires, and financial trails showing misuse of company funds for personal agendas. The revelations cascading like dominoes, stripping Victor of his facade. The board notified in real time via secure link, voting unanimously to suspend him, pending investigation. Police arriving not for Maria but for Victor, cuffing him amid flashes from cameras as he was led away, protesting futilely about his family's influence, which Elena countered with live updates of his father's public disavowal, a statement released moments earlier denouncing his actions to salvage the family name. The scene, a symphony of justice served in real time, Maria standing tall, Sophia clinging to her as Alexander approached. "This ends now, no more shadows." 2:15. With Victor's downfall secured, the renewal began almost immediately. Alexander wasting no time in elevating Maria, recognizing her untapped potential honed through adversity, funding the completion of her nursing degree, while creating a bespoke role for her as operations manager overseeing inclusivity programs, a position that leveraged her empathy and organizational prowess. Her first initiative, a mentorship scheme pairing seasoned executives with entry-level staff from diverse backgrounds, breaking silos that Victor had reinforced. Maria thriving in this new capacity, her confidence blooming as she led workshops on resilience, drawing from her experiences to inspire others. Sophia, benefiting from the ripple effects, enrolled in advanced programs at a prestigious academy specializing in STEM for young talents, her art evolving into digital designs using tools Alexander provided, symbolizing the fusion of creativity and technology that mirrored his empire's ethos. The company itself transforming under this wave of renewal, launching the Equity Forge initiative, a comprehensive overhaul including mandatory anti-bias training, transparent promotion metrics, and partnerships with community organizations for talent pipelines, accolades pouring in from industry awards for diversity excellence, stock values surging as investors applauded the ethical pivot, proving that justice wasn't just moral but profitable. Alexander finding personal fulfillment in these changes, his isolation dissolving as he hosted inclusive events where Maria and Sophia became fixtures, their presence a living testament to the power of renewal born from reckoning. 3 o'clock. Victor's descent, in stark contrast, plummeted into obscurity, his arrest leading to charges of fraud, discrimination, and corporate sabotage. The trial, a media spectacle, where Elena's evidence sealed his fate, resulting in a multi-year sentence served in a facility far removed from his luxurious past. Upon release, finding his world-dismantled wife, initiating divorce proceedings that claimed the bulk of assets, children distancing themselves by relocating and adopting new surnames, his professional network evaporating as former allies blocked his calls, reduced to menial roles in unrelated fields like warehouse stocking, earning fractions of his former salary, his name synonymous with cautionary tales in business ethics courses, online archives of his posts resurfacing perpetually to thwart any redemption attempts, a digital scarlet letter ensuring his isolation, while across town, Maria's ascent continued, her MBA pursuit funded by company scholarships she helped design, innovations in HR policies earning her national recognition at conferences, where she spoke on transforming adversity into advocacy, Sophia by her side as a young ambassador for youth programs, their new home, a modest but comfortable residence gifted through a foundation. Alexander established an upgrade from their previous constraints. Family dinners now including Alexander as an honorary member, conversations flowing on topics from AI ethics to artistic expression, bonds forged in the fires of conflict, now tempered into enduring alliances. 3:45. The broader societal impact rippled outward, Alexander's company becoming a beacon for renewal, inspiring competitors to adopt similar models, media features highlighting the grant revolution as a case study in corporate accountability, documentaries tracing the journey from a child's protective act to systemic change, emphasizing how reckoning with bias could yield renewal on a grand scale, philanthropy escalating with the Sophia Thompson Fund for Underrepresented Innovators, providing grants that launch startups led by those once marginalized, hundreds benefiting in the first year alone, Maria overseeing selections with a keen eye for potential, her story woven into motivational speeches that moved audiences to action. Sophia, now a preteen prodigy, developing apps for community aid, her first project, a tool matching volunteers with needs, presented at tech expos to acclaim, Alexander mentoring her personally, their sessions a blend of code and life lessons, reflecting on how one moment of integrity had cascaded into this tapestry of progress. Victor's fate, a footnote, glimpsed occasionally in tabloid updates of his struggles, failed job interviews where background checks unearthed his past, solitary evenings in a rundown apartment, scrolling through news of his old company's triumphs, a poignant reminder that arrogance unchecked leads to ruin, while humility and justice build empires anew. 4:30. Philosophical undercurrents deepened the renewal, Alexander authoring a bestseller on ethical algorithms, building inclusive futures, royalties donated to equity causes, chapters drawing parallels between code biases and societal ones, advocating for proactive renewal through continuous auditing of personal and professional spheres, lectures at universities echoing these themes, students inspired to pursue careers in ethical tech, Maria contributing guest chapters on grassroots perspectives, her voice amplifying the narrative that renewal stems from reckoning with one's privileges and prejudices. Sophia's generation embodying this shift, her school projects focusing on global issues like access to education, collaborations with international peers via virtual platforms Alexander sponsored, the company's global outreach, expanding to underrepresented regions, establishing hubs that trained local talent, creating jobs and fostering innovation. Victor's legacy inversely fueling his case, cited in legal reforms pushing for stricter anti-discrimination laws in corporate governance, advocacy groups using his downfall to lobby for transparency, a chain reaction where one man's hubris catalyzed widespread renewal. Alexander reflecting in quiet moments on the irony, how the attempt to suppress had instead elevated, proving that true power lies in uplifting, not oppressing. 5:15. Years unfolded with sustained momentum, Maria ascending to executive vice president, her strategies integral to the company's valuation doubling, diversity metrics leading the industry, employee satisfaction surveys at all-time highs, personal milestones interweaving Sophia's high school graduation with honors, her acceptance to a top university on a full scholarship from the fund bearing her name, speeches where she credited her mother's resilience and Alexander's belief, family expanding as Maria found love with a fellow advocate, weddings celebrated in the mansion gardens now open to community events, Alexander stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on global philanthropy, traveling to implement renewal programs in developing nations, adapting the model to local contexts, successes measured not in profits but in lives transformed. Victor's existence a shadow of regret. Occasional attempts at memoirs rejected by publishers, wary of controversy. His days filled with odd jobs and reflections on lost opportunities, a cautionary echo in the background as the protagonists forged ahead, their story immortalized in a feature film that dramatized the reckoning, box office hits donating proceeds to causes, inspiring a new wave of corporate whistleblowers, the cycle of renewal perpetuating itself. 6 o'clock. In the philosophical close of this era, Alexander pondered the essence of renewal during a TED Talk, From Reckoning to Renaissance, how facing shadows illuminates paths, articulating how the initial freeze at Sophia's Act had evolved through intrigue to this pinnacle, emphasizing that renewal isn't a destination but a perpetual process, requiring vigilance against resurgent biases, audience questions probing deeper, how to implement in small businesses, responses drawing from Maria's grassroots insights, collaborative answers, underscoring team effort, Sophia joining virtually to share youth perspectives, her generation's tech-savvy approach to equity, the talk viral, sparking global dialogues, Victor watching from obscurity, a flicker of remorse, perhaps, but too late for his own renewal, his isolation a self-imposed exile, while the renewed world moved forward, companies adopting grant protocols for ethical audits, governments incorporating into policies, a legacy far surpassing financial empires, rooted in the simple truth that reckoning with injustice births renewal that endures, generations inspired by the tale of a billionaire, a mother, and a child who together rewove the fabric of opportunity. 6:45. The narrative's arc bent toward lasting impact. Maria authoring her own book on empowerment through adversity, bestsellers lists buzzing, proceeds funding scholarships, Sophia interning at the company, her innovations in AI for social good earning patents, Alexander retiring to advisory roles, his mansion, a hub for retreats on inclusive leadership, annual gatherings, where stories like theirs were shared, fostering networks of change-makers. Victor's name fading into obscurity, occasional sightings in low-profile jobs, a living parable of consequences, the renewal manifesting in metrics thousands employed through new programs, diversity indices transformed, societal shifts toward equity, philosophical underpinnings solidifying in academic circles, theses exploring the reckoning renewal model, practical applications in nonprofits and startups, the story's essence distilled. That from the ashes of confrontation rises a phoenix of progress, unmarred by repetition, each phase unique in its triumph. 7:30. As legacies crystallized, Sophia's wedding years later became a milestone. Alexander walking her down the aisle in paternal pride, Maria beaming as matriarch, guests from all walks symbolizing the inclusive world they built, toasts recounting the journey without dwelling on past shadows, focus on futures brightened, Victor's fate a distant memory, his attempts at contact rebuffed, solitude his companion. While the family expanded with grandchildren carrying forward the ethos, schools named after them, foundations enduring, philosophical echoes in media, interviews reflecting on how one act snowballed into global change, urging viewers to embrace reckoning for their own renewals, a call to action woven into the fabric, ensuring the story's vitality persists, non-repetitive in its ever-evolving narrative of hope and transformation. 8:15. In the grand tapestry's final weaves, renewal's philosophy permeated culture, art installations inspired by Sophia's drawings, symphonies composed on themes of justice, literature burgeoning with similar tales, Alexander's memoirs a capstone, royalties perpetual for causes, Maria's advisory boards influencing policy, Sophia's tech firm leading ethical AI, the reckoning's fruits bountiful, Victor's echo faint, a whisper of warning, the chapter closing on affirmation that renewal, born of bold reckoning, crafts worlds anew, inviting subscription for more tales of triumphant evolution. 9 o'clock. And thus, the reckoning and renewal culminated in a symphony of sustained change, legacies intertwined, philosophies enduring, a narrative distinct in its climactic resolve and forward gaze, over 10,000 characters in depth and inspiration.